It's about 10 months since US President Donald Trump tweeted, "Korean War to end." But are we any closer to that becoming more official? I'm Alex Jensen for Korea Now, exploring this pressing question with the second ever US-North Korea summit less than 2 weeks away. So here we are, living through history's longest ceasefire, the Korean War brought to a pause by an armistice agreement nearly 66 years ago. Over the decades, we've seen flashpoints threaten to spill over, but a formal end-of-war declaration could be a major step towards a peace treaty to replace the armistice. The Koreas had agreed to seek a declaration by the end of 2018, having made their own vow that there will be no more war on the Korean peninsula. But that's not the same as a formal statement, including the US, which has around 28,500 troops stationed in South Korea. While not a legally binding peace treaty, an end-of-war declaration could still have major implications. Aside from potentially paving the way for a treaty, it would have to be very clear on how it affects or otherwise the terms of the 1953 armistice. And each side, North Korea, the US and South Korea, has its own agenda. Starting with the North, it's only really under Chairman Kim Jong-un that we've seen Pyongyang push so hard for an end-of-war declaration. The focus had been much more on lifting sanctions under the North Korean leader's predecessor, his late father, Kim Jong-il. Remember, the North also emerged from the Korean War claiming victory. So it's a curious shift from that to last year proclaiming an end-of-war declaration to be the demand of our time. As for the US, President Donald Trump's aforementioned celebration of the impending end of the Korean War and his well-documented desire to bring US troops home from South Korea at some point, it's not hard to believe reports that he verbally agreed to end the war when he first met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore last June. President Trump has certainly signaled a departure from the strategic patience of his predecessor, Barack Obama. And on the South Korean side, President Moon Jae-in's part of a group who feel an end-of-war declaration would lead to denuclearization, as opposed to those, including many in Washington, who insist it should be the other way round. Moon's ruffled conservative feathers, then, with his stance, as conservatives held power for 2 previous administrations, although Moon was chief of staff under late former President Moo-hyun, who presided over serious discussions about the possibility of an end-of-war declaration, including with ex-US President George W. Bush in 2006. Caution won the day back then, but is it time to throw some of that to the wind? Optimists might say Chairman Kim would use an end-of-war declaration to rally domestic backing for a denuclearization agreement and truly open up an era of lasting peace that's not so vulnerable to political change. That's certainly the hope among the powers that be in Seoul. But cynics would say Kim is using South Korea's stance under Moon to weaken the Seoul-Washington alliance and try to expose gaps in the armistice to undermine the justification for American troops on the Korean peninsula. Even if it were to be just a political statement and therefore not legally binding, as claimed by President Moon, critics are worried about the psychological impact on security. But that doesn't mean we won't see an attempt to reach a bold declaration when Trump meets Kim in Vietnam this month. We know from Washington's negotiator Stephen Biegun that the US is prepared to handle the issues of peace and denuclearization at the same time. But it's unclear whether they can agree on wording that protects Seoul and Washington's military interests at the same time as offering a security guarantee to North Korea. What happens next could tell us much about their true motivations.